On a quiet February morning in 2021, police in Maplewood, Illinois, were called to a suburban home on Cedar Lane. What they found inside the garage looked at first glance like a freak accident. 38-year-old Matthew Turner, a husband and father of two, lay motionless beside his car. His head was bloodied, his shirt soaked, and a trail of crimson marked the floor where he had collapsed. A hammer rested nearby, out of place in the sterile, organized space. But within minutes, officers realized this was no accident. The garage door had been locked from the outside. The hammer bore no fingerprints, and neighbors reported hearing strange noises in the night. Matthew Turner was not the victim of chance. He was the victim of a crime that had been carefully set in motion. Detectives would soon discover that the answer lay not in the garage, but in the late-night routines of his wife, Emily Turner. For months, she had told friends and family that long shifts at the hospital kept her away. But the truth behind those nights was darker than anyone could have guessed. As the investigation unfolded, police unearthed hidden rendezvous, financial secrets, and a plan that left even seasoned detectives stunned. This was not just a story of infidelity. It was a story of betrayal, deception, and a murder so meticulously planned that it nearly succeeded in passing as an accident. Maplewood, Illinois, was the kind of town where neighbors waved at each other from driveways and families gathered on weekends for community events. On the surface, life for the Turners seemed to fit perfectly into that picture. Matthew Turner, an accountant, was known as disciplined, reliable, and devoted to his family. His days followed a strict routine: work, family dinners, time with his children, and weekends spent coaching Little League. Friends described him as the type of man who lived for his family, a loyal husband and father who rarely stepped out of line. His wife, Emily Turner, presented the image of equal stability. At 35, she worked as a nurse at the local hospital. Her demanding schedule explained her late nights, her sudden exhaustion, and her frequent absences. Neighbors saw her as polite, professional, and attentive to her children when she was home. To most, the Turners looked like an ordinary, well-grounded couple. But beneath the calm, their lives were not what they appeared. Behind Emily's late nights and Matthew's unquestioning trust was a secret that would turn Maplewood's quiet streets into the center of a shocking investigation. What began as whispers of suspicion would unravel into one of the town's darkest stories. On February 12, 2021, at 6:47 a.m., a neighbor walking his dog noticed something unusual at the Turner residence. The garage door was closed, but a faint metallic smell lingered in the air, sharp and unmistakable. Minutes later, Matthew's sister, who had stopped by to drop off paperwork, discovered the body. She dialed 911 in a state of panic, and within 10 minutes, police and paramedics were on the scene. Inside the garage, the situation was grim. Matthew Turner lay on the concrete floor next to his sedan, his head split open by repeated blunt force trauma. A claw hammer, streaked with blood, rested several feet away. His body was angled awkwardly, suggesting he had fallen suddenly. Pools of blood had already begun to dry, indicating he had been dead for hours. There were no signs of forced entry, and nothing appeared stolen. The house itself was undisturbed, every door locked, every window secured. The scene immediately raised suspicion. A hammer found neatly placed nearby was wiped clean of prints. The garage door's outer latch had been secured, suggesting someone had locked it after leaving. Investigators quickly ruled out an accident. Matthew's injuries were consistent with a deliberate assault, not a fall or self-inflicted harm. As detectives combed through the property, Emily Turner was located inside the home. According to her account, she had returned from a late night hospital shift just after 2 a.m., gone directly to bed, and only discovered police outside when she woke that morning. She appeared calm but tired, repeating that she had no idea what had happened. But officers noted discrepancies immediately. Emily's car was parked in the driveway, not at the hospital where she claimed to have worked. Calls placed to the hospital. revealed she had not been scheduled for an overnight shift. The timeline she presented began to unravel within hours of Matthew's body being found. The initial autopsy confirmed Matthew Turner had died between 11 p.m. and 9 a.m., narrowing the window to the exact hours Emily claimed she was away. His cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head. The number of blows indicated overkill, suggesting not just intent, but determination. Meanwhile, neighbors provided key observations. Several reported hearing noises between midnight and 1 a.m. A loud bang, the faint hum of a garage door, opening and closing, and what one described as muffled thuds. Another neighbor recalled seeing a dark SUV parked briefly outside the Turner home around midnight, a vehicle that did not belong to Matthew or Emily. The crime scene unit documented every detail. Blood spatter analysis showed Matthew had been struck while standing, then collapsed, after which at least one additional blow had been delivered. There were no defensive wounds on his arms, suggesting he had been caught off guard, possibly attacked from behind. The hammer had been deliberately placed on the floor, almost staged. Detectives began treating the case as a homicide with one primary suspect, Emily Turner. Her alibi had already collapsed under scrutiny, and her connection to the locked garage raised critical questions. If she had truly been asleep upstairs, why hadn't she heard the attack? And how had the garage been secured from the outside? The crime shocked Maplewood. By the end of that day, police had cordoned off the Turner residence, treating it as an active crime scene. Matthew's children, aged 10 and 7, were sent to stay with relatives, their lives abruptly torn apart by the events of the night. Friends and family gathered outside the home, stunned by the news that a man known for his loyalty and devotion had been killed in such brutal fashion. What investigators didn't know yet was that Matthew Turner's murder was only the beginning of a complex web of deception. The late nights Emily had carefully explained away would soon reveal an entirely different story, one filled with hidden meetings, financial schemes, and a plan that had been building quietly in the shadows long before that February night. The homicide unit of the Maplewood Police Department quickly assigned Detective Laura Bennett as the lead investigator. With over a decade of experience handling domestic and violent crimes, Bennett was known for her meticulous approach and refusal to overlook even the smallest detail. From the moment she stepped into the Turner garage, she recognized signs of staging: the hammer positioned neatly on the floor, the lack of defensive wounds, and the secured garage door all pointed to planning rather than a spontaneous act of violence. The first step was reconstructing Matthew's final hours. His phone records showed no unusual activity. He had sent a routine email to a colleague around 9:30 p.m. and browsed financial statements shortly before 10 DIGU. After that, all communication ceased. The autopsy placed his time of death between 11:30 p.m. and 1 a.m., aligning almost perfectly with Emily's claimed hospital shift. Investigators immediately verified Emily's alibi. Hospital administrators confirmed she had not been on duty that night and had not clocked in for any overnight shift in the past 2 weeks. This revelation placed her directly under suspicion. When questioned, she claimed she had gone in for extra hours but had left early due to a scheduling mistake. Detectives noted how quickly her story shifted and how vague her explanation became under scrutiny. The search of the Turner home yielded more troubling evidence. In Emily's bedroom dresser, officers found a set of clothing with faint reddish stains. Forensics confirmed the presence of blood, though DNA analysis was pending. In the trunk of her car, investigators discovered disposable gloves, one of them with small traces of blood. These items had been overlooked during initial processing, but Detective Bennett considered them critical. Surveillance footage from the neighborhood added another layer. A traffic camera at the corner of Cedar Lane captured Emily's SUV pulling into the driveway at 11:47 p.m. The timestamp contradicted her claim of being at the hospital until 2:14 a.m. A second camera from a nearby gas station recorded the same. SUV leaving the area around 12:30 a.m. The footage effectively placed her at the crime scene during the exact window of Matthew's death. Detectives also focused on financial records. In the weeks leading up to the murder, Emily had taken out 2 large cash withdrawals totaling nearly $15,000. The money had not been deposited back into any account, and investigators suspected it had been used for purposes yet unknown. Further digging revealed Emily had also increased her husband's life insurance policy by nearly $250,000 just 6 months earlier, a decision she claimed was routine planning. To law enforcement, it looked like preparation. Attention then turned to the mysterious SUV spotted by neighbors. Although one described it as unfamiliar, surveillance showed it was Emily's vehicle. Tire marks in the driveway matched the tread on her SUV, confirming she had left and returned during the critical hours. This aligned with the gas station footage, strengthening the case against her. Detective Bennett assembled the timeline. Matthew had been alive and active until at least 10:45 p.m. Emily arrived home just before midnight. Neighbors reported hearing banging sounds and the garage door opening and closing around that time. By 12:30 a.m., her SUV was seen leaving the area. When she returned, Matthew was already dead in the garage, the scene staged to appear accidental. The next step was forensic analysis of the hammer. Despite being wiped clean, investigators discovered faint blood traces in the grooves of the metal. DNA confirmed it matched Matthew. The absence of fingerprints further supported staging, as most household tools showed natural prints from daily use. Detectives considered it likely that Emily had worn gloves during the attack, consistent with the gloves recovered from her car. Meanwhile, interviews with friends and colleagues painted a clearer picture of Emily's late nights. Several co-workers reported she had been leaving early or skipping shifts entirely, often citing family emergencies or last-minute changes. Her supervisor confirmed she had been written up twice in the past year for inconsistencies in her schedule. These discrepancies highlighted that her alibi had been fabricated repeatedly, not just on the night of the murder. One of the more revealing discoveries came from phone records. Emily's cell phone pinged towers near Cedar Lane during the hours. She claimed to be at the hospital. Additionally, detectives found multiple calls exchanged with an unknown number registered under a prepaid phone. The frequency of these calls increased dramatically in the weeks leading up to Matthew's death. Investigators suspected the number belonged to someone connected to her secret late-night activities, though the identity remained unclear at this. Stage. Detective Bennett pressed forward, convinced Emily had both the motive and opportunity. The life insurance policy, the missing cash, the falsified alibi, and the surveillance footage all converged into a damning narrative. Still, she needed one piece to solidify the case, evidence that linked Emily directly to the act of striking Matthew with the hammer. That break came through forensic testing of the clothing found in Emily's dresser. The stains, initially faint, were confirmed as Matthew's blood. Spatter analysis indicated they were consistent with blowback from a blunt force impact. This placed Emily not just at the scene but in direct contact with her husband during the fatal assault. By the end of February, Detective Bennett had built a strong case. On March 1st, Emily Turner was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. The evidence was overwhelming, yet the investigation was not finished. Detectives still needed to identify the role of the mysterious late-night phone calls, the missing cash, and the possibility that Emily had not acted alone. The discovery of Matthew Turner's body had opened the door to a shocking crime, but what came next would reveal that the murder was not just about financial gain or a crumbling marriage. The investigation was about to uncover a plot with layers no one in Maplewood had anticipated. When Emily Turner was arrested, investigators believed they had a clear case: a wife with a failing marriage, financial motives, and a staged crime scene. But as prosecutors prepared for trial, a series of new revelations complicated everything, exposing a darker narrative that stretched beyond what anyone had first suspected. The first major breakthrough came from the prepaid phone records. Detectives subpoenaed call logs and traced the activity to a number used frequently late at night. While registered anonymously, surveillance footage from an ATM captured Emily meeting with a man who matched the timeline of several calls. The man was later identified as David Miller, a 40-year-old contractor who had previously done work on the Turners' home. Investigators quickly learned Emily and David had been seeing each other for nearly a year, their relationship hidden behind Emily's excuses of long hospital shifts. This discovery changed the trajectory of the case. The late nights Matthew had quietly trusted were not hospital duties. They were meetings with another man. David Miller became a central figure in the investigation. Detectives searched his home and vehicle, uncovering a stash of cash that closely matched the amount Emily had withdrawn before the murder. The bills were bundled in the same way, further linking the two. At first, David denied involvement. He admitted to the affair but claimed no knowledge of Matthew's murder. However, forensic analysis placed him at the scene indirectly. Fibers found on Matthew's clothing matched the interior of David's truck. More damningly, GPS data revealed David's vehicle had been near the Turner residence on the night of the killing, departing around the same time neighbors heard noises. This raised the question: had Emily acted alone, or had David assisted? Another shocking revelation came from Matthew's financial records. Investigators discovered that in the months leading up to his death, Matthew had quietly started moving money into a separate account. This account, unknown to Emily, contained over $60,000. Detectives theorized Matthew may have suspected Emily's activities and was preparing for separation. Combined with the increased life insurance policy Emily had taken out, the financial angle appeared even more sinister. But the most damning evidence surfaced when digital forensic teams combed through Emily's laptop. Hidden files revealed detailed internet searches on how to make a murder look like an accident. Topics included staging crime scenes, blunt force trauma versus falls, and how to clean fingerprints off metal. These searches were conducted in the weeks before Matthew's death, leaving little doubt about premeditation. Still, the investigation took another unexpected turn when David Miller's ex-wife contacted authorities. She claimed David had once spoken bitterly about Matthew Turner during a dinner, suggesting that Matthew had shortchanged him during a contracting job. According to her statement, David had said, "One day I'll make him pay." While circumstantial, it gave prosecutors an additional motive beyond the affair: revenge. With both Emily and David now under scrutiny, detectives began building the theory that Matthew's murder was the result of a conspiracy. Emily provided access to the home, staged the alibi, and potentially delivered the fatal blows, while David assisted in planning and escape. The cash found in his possession pointed to payment or shared gain, while his truck's GPS tied him to the scene. Forensic reanalysis of the hammer added to the suspicion. While no fingerprints were present, trace elements of soil on the handle matched samples taken from David Miller's backyard. Experts suggested the tool may have been moved between locations before the murder. This connection pulled David deeper into the case, even as he continued to deny direct involvement. By early summer, prosecutors charged David Miller as a co-conspirator. The charges included aiding and abetting first-degree murder. His arrest shocked Maplewood further. Two defendants now stood accused of orchestrating the brutal death of a man many considered the epitome of loyalty and devotion. The twists didn't end there. During further questioning, Emily attempted to shift blame entirely onto David, claiming he had pressured her into silence and had been the one to carry out the killing. She insisted she had only covered for him out of fear. But this claim collapsed when prosecutors introduced the damning internet search history. Jurors would later recall that this piece of evidence destroyed any illusion that Emily had been a passive participant. What made the case even more chilling was how carefully it had been constructed. Emily's months of hospital shifts were revealed as calculated groundwork for her alibi. Her cash withdrawals provided both a safety net and a resource for her accomplice. And the increased life insurance policy demonstrated financial pre-planning, ensuring she would benefit from Matthew's death. For the community of Maplewood, each revelation was a new shock. Friends who had once admired the Turners' stability struggled to reconcile the image of Emily as a caring nurse and mother with the reality of a woman who had allegedly plotted her husband's murder. The discovery of her affair with David Miller, combined with the financial schemes, painted a picture of betrayal so deep that it shook even seasoned investigators. By the end of the pre-trial phase, prosecutors had reshaped their case entirely. What had begun as a straightforward spousal murder was now presented as a conspiracy involving both Emily Turner and David Miller. The once loyal husband had not only been deceived but systematically eliminated through a plan his wife carried out while maintaining the appearance of normalcy. The twists exposed a brutal truth. Matthew Turner's trust had been exploited, his faith in his wife used as a weapon against him. The investigation had peeled back layers of lies, exposing not only a crime of passion, but a crime of calculation, driven by betrayal, greed, and the quiet ruthlessness of two people who thought they could outsmart everyone around them. The trial of Emily Turner and David Miller began in January 2022 at the Maplewood County Courthouse. It was the most highly publicized case the community had seen in decades. The prosecution entered the courtroom with a mountain of evidence: surveillance footage, financial records, forensic analysis, and most damaging of all, the Internet search history found on Emily's laptop. The charges were severe. Emily Turner faced first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and insurance fraud. David Miller faced aiding and abetting, conspiracy, and accessory to murder. Prosecutors argued that together they had planned Matthew Turner's death with precision, executing a scheme that relied on Emily's access to the home and David's assistance in covering their tracks. The state built its case step by step. Jurors were shown traffic camera footage of Emily's SUV entering the driveway at 11:47 p.m. and leaving just after 12:30 a.m., directly within the window of Matthew's death. They listened as forensic experts explained how blood spatter on Emily's clothing proved close contact during the attack. They examined the hammer, stripped of fingerprints but carrying traces of soil that tied back to David's backyard. The prosecution emphasized motive: Emily's growing debt, the $250,000 life insurance policy, and her secret relationship with David Miller. Combined, they painted the picture of a calculated murder designed for financial and personal freedom. The defense strategy was divided. Emily's attorneys argued she had been manipulated by David, portraying her as vulnerable and pressured into silence. They insisted the blood on her clothing came from cradling Matthew after discovering him, not from delivering the blows. David's attorneys took a different path, admitting to the affair but denying any role in the murder. They claimed his presence near the Turner residence was coincidental, tied to a job nearby. Witness testimony became pivotal. Neighbors recalled the strange noises the night of the murder, describing the sound of the garage door and muffled thuds. A hospital administrator confirmed Emily was not scheduled for a shift, undermining her alibi. Forensic specialists dismantled the defense by explaining the technical impossibility of the blood patterns on Emily's clothes being transfer stains. They were consistent with high-velocity impact. The most dramatic moment came when prosecutors played Emily's hidden search history on a large screen in the courtroom. The jury saw the words themselves: how to make a murder look like an accident, clean fingerprints off a hammer, and blunt force trauma staging. The courtroom fell silent as each search was read aloud, leaving little doubt about premeditation. After 3 weeks of testimony, both sides presented closing arguments. The prosecution reiterated that Matthew Turner had been a loyal husband who suspected nothing until his final moments, murdered in his own home by the very person he trusted most. The defense argued reasonable doubt, pointing fingers back and forth between Emily and David, each trying to shift responsibility. The jury deliberated for 26 hours before reaching a verdict. Emily Turner was found guilty on all counts: first-degree murder, conspiracy, and insurance fraud. David Miller was convicted of conspiracy to commit murder and aiding and abetting, though the jury acquitted him of directly striking Matthew Turner. Sentencing followed quickly. Emily received life in prison without the possibility of parole. David Miller was sentenced to 35 years. The outcome brought closure to some, but not all. For Matthew's family, the sentences were justice, but no verdict could restore what had been lost. For Maplewood, the trial exposed a chilling reality: that behind suburban facades and late-night excuses, betrayal could take root and grow into something deadly. The courtroom drama had ended, but the echoes of Matthew Turner's death would linger long after the gavel fell. The case of Matthew Turner revealed how trust can be weaponized in the most devastating way. A husband described as loyal, disciplined, and devoted was murdered in his own home, not by a stranger, but through a conspiracy led by the very person he trusted most. Emily Turner, who maintained the facade of a caring wife and mother, had used late nights and false hospital shifts as cover for an affair, secret meetings, and ultimately a plot to end her husband's life. The investigation dismantled her alibi piece by piece: surveillance footage, phone records, forensic testing, and financial trails exposed every lie. The discovery of David Miller's involvement only deepened the betrayal, transforming the case from a spousal murder into a calculated conspiracy. The courtroom confirmed what investigators already knew: the crime was premeditated, planned down to the smallest detail, and executed with ruthless precision. In the end, Emily received a life sentence without parole, while David Miller faced 35 years behind bars. Maplewood moved on, but the scars of the case remained. Neighbors still recalled the flashing police lights that morning, the whispers about Emily's late nights, and the shocking truth that unfolded over months of investigation. The story leaves one haunting question: how well can we ever truly know the people closest to us? And when loyalty blinds us, do we risk missing the warning signs that danger is already inside our own home?